everything turned on its head. That's what Jesus does through the course of this gospel. Did you notice that at the beginning of the Gospels, the Pharisees insisted that those who were blind must be blind for a sin, either their own or their parents? And by the time we come to those last words of the Gospel, Christ, who is saying, I've come to bring sight to the blind are those who are needing God's mercy, grace, forgiveness, repentance, the work of divine love. And those who are blind will come to sight. And so if you are saying, oh dear Pharisees, that you're blind, you have no sin, and you have no need for me, and so you can remain in your sight, which means you remain in your sin. But we're made for true sight. We're made for true vision. We're made for the vision of glory, the beatific vision of God, not only just in heaven to come, but entering into our lives already here and now. And yet there is a darkness about us. A darkness in general, which is why we celebrate Lent like this each year this way. But there is a unique darkness about us, isn't it, right now? With this coronavirus, the scare of it, the lack of certainty, our lack of knowledge, our ignorance, not knowing what to do or how to fully respond, hearing the war call of our government leaders on state and federal, local levels, that we are facing an unseen evil, but we must rally together as a people, as a nation, as a world to overcome it, and that we can, that there is something of a darkness in that, perhaps in our own fears, our worries, perhaps just not knowing what to do or even how to respond. Perhaps you're like me, and even the little tickle in the throat's got you every now and then worried, and you certainly don't want to have other people hear you cough right now. All of these things can add up and become something of a darkness that has loomed over us these days. It reminds me of the plagues of Egypt. When God was liberating, freeing his people, we must have that always in mind, that God is at work. And he was liberating the people of old, the Hebrews, out of their slavery, their bondage in Egypt. And as one of the steps along the way, one of the plagues that would ultimately lead to freedom, God sent a deep darkness, a many-day darkness upon all people, his people and the Egyptians, as a sign that he was at work, that his hand was mighty, and that he would even do greater things yet. So there's a darkness, but God is behind the darkness. He didn't cause the darkness. He's more powerful than the darkness, and we can reach out for him through the darkness. Those of you here at All Souls who know me well know that perhaps I'm given to the poetic, and I look for inspiration and encouragement in verse. And so I have some to share with you today. If in fact we're facing something of a warlike condition, something reminiscent for some of us as 9/11, for those who are older, perhaps the Depression, war years, who knows how bad, but at least it's bad right now and we'll get through it. I'm reminded of what happened at the dawn of the Second World War, when King George VI in England had to rally the people of England to a hope that God would prevail. He went on the radio and he shared this poem. I give it again to you today. It's called The Gate of the Year. And I said to the man who stood at the gate of the year, give me a light that I may tread safely into the unknown. And he replied, go out into the darkness and put your hand into the hand of God. That shall be to you better than light and safer than a known way. So I went forth, and finding the hand of God, trod gladly into the night. And he led me toward the hills and the breaking of day in the lone east. So heart, be still. What need our little life, our human life, to know, if God have comprehension? In all the dizzying strife of things both high and low, God hideth his intention. God knows. His will is best. The stretch of years which wind ahead, so dim to our imperfect vision, are clear to God. Our fears are premature. In him all time hath full provision. Then rest, until God moves to lift the veil from our impatient eyes, when, as the sweeter features of life's stern face we hail, there beyond all surmise, God's thought around his creatures our mind shall fill. We are like the blind man today, awaiting for sight to come from the hand of the Lord Jesus. But we have to be honest about our darkness. What is your darkness? Where do we have darknesses in our life? I'm not talking about the physical darkness. Today is going to be a beautiful day. In Colorado, the snow will melt and the sun will come out and it will be warm. I'm talking about the spiritual darknesses, the emotional darknesses, the threat of even physical darknesses right now, physical darknesses of the flesh, of the body. But Christ will be our light. Christ can give us light if we but let him call upon him and choose that he should be brighter to us than the sun at midday. What are your darknesses and mine? Perhaps this coronavirus is itself a darkness, and all that it pretends, all that it would give us fear of. We don't have to be afraid, but there is an uncertainty there, and there is a darkness around us, for families and friends and all. There's a darkness for our first responders who don't know when they come to a home what they're going to meet. There's a darkness to the medical workers I've spoken to in the last days who don't know the next one to come through the hospital and how it might affect them personally or their families. So the coronavirus is a darkness, but it's not the only one, and quite honestly, it's not even the worst one. Coronavirus can be used by God. He didn't cause it. He can use it. In his permissive will, he can actually bring greater things to pass through it. God has always been able to do that, and he still can. So he can help us. Coronavirus could be an aid to see things more clearly now in the light of God than before. We see our own life, the good of human life, that every human life, though fragile, is infinitely beautiful and worth cherishing and esteeming. In these days, as we fight for lives, we remember to hold no life cheap. Life is a beautiful thing. We see that clearly now. Health. Health is a good. We should protect it, promote it, build it up. The physical life of our body is good. We are body and soul, and God has given us the gift of our bodily life, so we should defend it, promote it as best we can. But it is not an absolute good. You see, our spiritual life is more important than even our bodily life. So what if we get a disease? We're all going to die anyway. I hope now that many people are well. I don't wish the worst for anybody, not myself, not anybody else. But who knows what God's intentions are behind it all? And worse would be a spiritual illness than a bodily illness. Let us not fall away from God or fall into a major sin. Let us keep our souls alive in a state of sanctifying grace. That is true health. We see clearly these days the importance of our family. Oh, how we live such disconnected lives in this modern age. People getting up early, having a cheap breakfast, running off to work, sitting in front of a computer screen all day, taking phone calls, video conferences, precious little human interaction, racing home, feeling fatigued, not always as present as they would like to be to their families. There was already a darkness there. There's a light now. We can reappraise the good of our family as we devote time to them in these days. That's a beautiful thing, a hopeful thing, a joyful thing. Oh yes, you might drive each other a little crazy in these days. We'll be honest about that. But it gives us a chance to love each other all the more, spend more time with each other. We need a balance of life. Even if you're working from home, and even if you're doing school from home, have a good life-work balance right now. Put the computers away at times. Turn off the television. There's only so much bad news you can take in. There's only so many Netflix series you can binge watch. Don't do it. You've got a soul, and you need other people. So let's tend to these. Get out the cards, play card games. Get out the board games. Break out a story and read it aloud. Share good poems, like I'm doing for you today. Share the stories of your family. Go back multiple generations. Say, what were Grandma and Grandpa like? What did they do? If you've got anybody who went through the Great Depression or through more difficult times, hear their stories of hope and encouragement. Be present to the people you love. We have a light on us today of valuing our family, and so to our friends. and all whom God would put in our lives to share the good of our lives with. There's also a light coming upon us, the light of faith. We are fighting all the more for our faith these days because we've gotten into routines, good routines, blessed routines, of going to Mass every Sunday, of doing all the normal things that we would for our faith to keep it nourished and alive. We're having to fight for that. Here we are, live stream, computer, television, however you're watching me. These are good. There's something imperfect to this. It is better if we are together at Mass, celebrating the sacraments, being in each other's company, not virtually, but really. We're going to long for that, pine for that. These are the days for increasing our desire for Jesus, the sacraments, the church, and one another, and these are beautiful realities. And in the meantime, we keep our spirits high. We know that God is present, He is here, and we can still yet pray. The Mass is still offered, and for you, today, for all the parishioners of All Souls Parish, for all who live and work within these parish boundaries of All Souls. But our faith is thrown into a new light. If after all our faith is a relationship with God, perhaps this is the thing we need most of all. This is the light we need most of all. We've all come from the earth, and to the earth we shall return. From dust to dust, ashes to ashes. On Ash Wednesday, the priests and deacons and others said, "Remember you are dust, and to dust you shall return." Adam came from the dust of the earth. And so in this man born blind, who is a new Adam, in the new Adam who is Christ, Christ takes the dust of the earth and breathes his life into it. And with his own saliva, which I have to admit is not all that corona appropriate, he then makes this mud. He anoints the eyes, begs him to bathe in the pool of Siloam. And so we have dust combined with water. We have the dust of the earth that we are with the life of the grace of baptism, and these combined bring new life and the light of Christ. That's why we call the sacrament of baptism, the sacrament of the enlightenment. And you and I are those who have been enlightened and are being enlightened by Christ. But we have to be honest about our darknesses. And then we spiritually this Sunday say, "Okay, Lord, here I am, the little dust that I am, for all my fears and my worries, my preoccupations, and I need you to bring me light." And so our lasting reflection and our meditation now will be from a saint, newly minted, newly canonized, the late, great Cardinal John Henry Newman, made a saint by Pope Francis just months ago. Some of you might know the hymn, the poem. Lead, kindly light, amidst the encircling gloom, lead thou me on. The night is dark, and I am far from home. Lead thou me on. Keep thou my feet, I do not ask to see the distant scene, one step enough for me. I was not ever thus, nor prayed that thou shouldst lead me on. I loved to choose and see my path, but now lead thou me on. I loved the garish day, and in spite of fears, pride ruled my will. Remember not past years. So long thy power hath blessed me, sure it still will lead me on. O'er moor and fen, o'er crag and torrent, till the night is gone. And when the morn those angel faces smile, which I have loved long since, and lost a while.